Welcome to The Explainer. Look, if you're a student right now, I know you're probably juggling a totally chaotic schedule. You've got lectures, assignments, late night cram sessions, and, you're actually trying to maintain some semblance of a social life, right? It honestly feels like there's never enough time, like you're stuck running on this endless treadmill of distractions. But today we're going to unlock what is literally the ultimate 21st century superpower for busy students. We're talking about the ability to focus deeply. So our entire roadmap for today comes straight out of this incredibly transformative book, Deep Work, by computer science professor Cal Newport. He basically argues that this ability to perform deep work is becoming super rare at the exact same time it's becoming incredibly valuable. And honestly, if you can master this while you're still a student, you are absolutely going to thrive. Okay, let's dive into this. Today we're following a 6-part structure. First up, the deep work advantage. Then, step 1, choose your philosophy. Step 2, build your ritual. Step 3, embrace boredom. Step 4, call the shallow. And finally, the shutdown habit. All right, part 1, the deep work advantage, from distracted to dominant. To kick things off, let's look at the insane advantage deep work gives you. Meet Jason Ben. Shortly after taking a gig as a financial consultant, Jason realized most of his work could actually just be automated by a simple Excel script. So he wanted to level up his value by learning computer programming, but he ran into a huge wall. He just couldn't stay focused. He actually admitted that there were days he spent 98% of his time just surfing the web. 98%. So he took some pretty drastic action. He locked himself in a room, no computer, just textbooks, some note cards, and a highlighter. He literally forced his brain to concentrate. And guess what? It worked. He crushed this notoriously brutal coding bootcamp and landed a job at a tech startup that more than doubled his previous salary. Jason's story is the perfect proof that focus isn't just some rare genetic gift, it is a highly trainable skill. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast it shows between two totally different types of effort. Deep work is this distraction-free concentration that absolutely pushes your cognitive limits. It actually creates new value and levels up your skills. But on the flip side, we have shallow work. These are those non-cognitively demanding, completely logistical tasks that you just do while you're distracted. It's super easy to replicate, and honestly, it doesn't push you forward at all. The scary reality here, the average knowledge worker spends over 60% of their work week just on electronic communication and internet searching. For us as students, think about how much of your actual study time is really just, endless group chats, mindlessly refreshing course portals, or scrolling TikTok while your textbook is just sitting open on your desk. This frenetic, shallow behavior doesn't just waste time, it actually permanently reduces your brain's capacity to perform deep work. The philosopher Antonin Delme-Sertillanges once said, "Let your mind become a lens, thanks to the converging rays of attention." It's a beautiful metaphor, right? To learn really hard things quickly, you have to let your mind become that magnifying glass, focusing incredibly intensely without any distraction. Because from a neuroscience perspective, this kind of intense concentration actually isolates relevant neural circuits. It triggers the growth of something called myelin around your neurons, which literally upgrades your brain's hardware. And yeah, you absolutely cannot get this kind of neural growth if you're simultaneously checking your Instagram feed. No way. So let's see how all this builds into an actionable playbook. We're going to move step by step up this ladder to completely reclaim your attention and basically turn you into a deep learning machine. Moving right along to step 1, choose your philosophy. You have to realize that deep work can't just be scheduled on a whim whenever you feel kind of inspired. You have to intentionally choose a philosophy that actually fits your life. There are 4 main ones here. First, the monastic approach. This eliminates all shallow obligations completely, which is great if you're like a reclusive novelist, but terrible for a student who actually needs to show up to class. Next is the bimodal approach. This is where you disappear from multi-day deep work binges. Again, not practical when you've got weekly assignments due. But look at those bottom 2. The rhythmic philosophy is all about transforming deep work into a daily repeating habit. Think of doctoral candidate Brian Chappell. The guy had a full-time job and a newborn baby, but he successfully wrote his dissertation just by waking up and going deep at the exact same time every single day. And then there's the journalistic philosophy, which is basically squeezing out depth whenever a block of time naturally opens up in your schedule. For the totally chaotic life of a student, picking either a rhythmic or journalistic philosophy is, for sure, your absolute best bet. Next up, step 2, build your ritual. Once you've picked your philosophy, it's time to build a customized fortress for your focus. Here's the thing. You only have a finite amount of willpower every day. If you have to constantly decide where you're going to study, or if you're allowed to check your phone, or even where your notes are, you're going to drain that willpower super fast. To minimize that friction, your ritual has to dictate exactly where you'll work, like maybe a specific quiet desk in the corner of the library, and for how long. It has to outline exactly how you'll work. Maybe that means a strict, absolute ban on the internet. And finally, it has to clarify how you'll support your work. Making sure you've got a good cup of coffee and all your materials are completely organized before you even sit down. And this brilliantly illustrates what journalist David Brooks once noted: great creative minds think like artists, but work like accountants. I love that. They don't just sit around waiting for inspiration to magically strike. They're rigid. They're incredibly strict with their routines. These boring, accountant-like rituals are actually the very foundation that preserves your mental energy so that high-level academic creativity can actually flourish when you finally start working. Moving into the cognitive workout phase, we have step 3, embrace boredom. Listen, concentration is a muscle. And right now, if you're constantly caving to distraction the second you feel a tiny hint of boredom, that concentration muscle is probably pretty weak. To bulk it up, try a tactic called Rooseveltian intensity. Here's how it works. Identify a deep task, estimate how long it would normally take you to finish it, and then give yourself a drastically reduced hard deadline. Set a countdown timer on your phone and prop it right up where you can see it ticking down. This injects such a massive level of intensity into your study session that your brain is literally forced out of its comfortable distracted baseline. You physically don't have time to be distracted if you're racing to beat that clock. You could even train your brain outside of your normal study hours. Take the story of student Daniel Kiloff. He wasn't born with some kind of photographic memory, but he actively trained himself to memorize a completely shuffled deck of cards. By practicing this incredibly intense rote memorization, he incidentally built up the exact type of relentless concentration muscle that you need for deep academic work. So the big takeaway here? Find a really high-focus mental hobby to practice when you aren't hitting the books. And that brings us to step 4, cull the shallow. This is our final active step in the playbook. You have to ruthlessly protect the time required to go deep by just completely minimizing the meaningless busy work in your day. The best way to do this? Schedule every single minute of your day. Now, wait, I know that sounds absolutely exhausting, but the goal here is to stop living on autopilot. If you just leave your schedule wide open, trivial distractions will literally seep into every single corner of it. By giving every minute a job, you're treating your time with respect. And ironically, adding all this structure actually creates way more freedom. You can always abandon the plan if a sudden deep academic insight strikes, or if a really good lecture runs late. But the point is, you always have a baseline to return to. Whenever you're mapping out that daily schedule, throw this thought experiment at your tasks. Could a smart, recent college graduate complete this task with only a few months of training? If the answer is yes, like say organizing a Google Drive folder or perfectly formatting a bibliography, then guess what? It's a shallow task. It's not leveraging your unique, hard-earned expertise. Objectively quantifying your tasks like this really helps you minimize that shallow busy work and maximize the deep, high-value study time that actually moves the needle. Finally, we arrive at section 6, the shutdown habit. To wrap up our explainer today, we really have to talk about the absolute necessity of rest. So the crucial point is this: your capacity for deep work in a single day is strictly limited. It takes a massive, massive toll on your cognitive resources. What that means is, at the end of the day, you must completely shut down your consideration of school or work issues until the next morning. Seriously, no after-dinner email checks, no just reading one more chapter in bed. True evening rest isn't a luxury. It is a mandatory physiological requirement if you want to have any energy left to focus deeply again tomorrow. Think about it. Throughout history, the greatest minds have rigorously protected their focus. Take the famous psychiatrist Carl Jung. He actually built a literal 2-story stone house out in the woods, the Ballingering Tower. And he didn't run away to this tower to escape his professional life. He retreated there to advance it. He built a literal fortress to protect his ability to think deeply. And by doing that, he completely changed the way we understand the human mind. Now, obviously, you don't need to go build a literal stone tower in the woods, but you do need to build a life that fiercely protects your attention. If you actually choose a philosophy, build a really strict ritual, start training that concentration muscle, and cut out all the shallow noise, you are going to unlock your true academic potential. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder. What will you build in your own personal Ballingen Tower? Because ultimately, guys, a deep life really is a good life. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.